A silence had fallen over the galaxy, a profound and terrifying quiet that had lasted for 73 standard years. It was a silence born not of peace, but of absence. Dr. Eris Thorne remembered the noise, the chaotic, beautiful symphony of 1,000 cultures speaking, trading, and singing across the void. He remembered the vibrant hum of the Galactic Concordance, a network of worlds teeming with life in every conceivable form. Then came the silence. It wasn't a war, not in any sense they understood. There were no declarations, no invading fleets, no final, desperate battles, one by one, system by system. The voices of the Concordance simply went out. Ships vanished from transit corridors. Planets ceased their orbital broadcasts. A wave of nothingness washed over civilization, leaving only scattered pockets of survivors, like humanity, huddled in the forgotten backwaters of the cosmos, staring into the ghost-haunted darkness. Eris now lived in that darkness, aboard the Menamazani station, a deep space archive tethered to a rogue asteroid drifting in the Oort cloud of a dead star. It was a library at the end of the universe, its purpose to preserve the memory of what was lost. He was its head, and often its only, archivist, a stooped man with eyes that held the twin weights of accumulated knowledge and unbearable loss. He spent his days sifting through the digital ghosts of dead civilizations, a historian cataloging the end of history. His obsession, the one that drew quiet scorn from the station's pragmatic commander, was a myth, a piece of pre-concordance folklore dismissed by every serious academic as a comforting delusion. The legend of the Sentinels. The tale varied across cultures, but the core was always the same and ancient. Pre-concordant civilization of unimaginable power had faced an existential threat, an enemy they called the Unravelers. Unable to win, they had not fled into the void but had instead folded their entire fleet, a ghost armada, into a pocket dimension, a crease in the fabric of space-time, promising to return when the galaxy needed them most. A fairy tale. Commander Eva Rostova called it a dangerous waste of energy and hope when survival depended on cold, hard reality. But Eris saw patterns others missed. He saw the Sentinel myth echoed in the final, fragmented transmissions of a dozen different worlds as the silence fell. He saw their unique symbolic triad, a spear piercing a circle within a triangle, etched into the ruins of planets that had died millennia before the Concordance had even been a dream. The symbol was a warning. He was sure of it, a key to understanding what had happened and what was perhaps yet to come. His search had led him away from traditional data archives and into the esoteric field of cosmoacoustics, the study of the background resonance of the universe. For years, he had been listening, using the station's long-range sensor array to peel back the layers of cosmic radiation, searching for a whisper beneath the steady hiss of creation. And then he found it. Not a sound, not a light wave, but a gravitational pulse. It was a faint, rhythmic anomaly originating from the Boötes void, a sector of space so empty it was thought to be a statistical impossibility. The signal was structured, intelligent, and it defied all known physics. It was as if something was tapping on the drum of space-time itself. For weeks, Eris worked in secret, rerouting processing power from non-essential systems, risking Rostova's wrath. He filtered the signal, amplified it, and translated its complex gravitational wave patterns into a visual algorithm. When the image resolved on his screen, a cold dread, mingled with an electrifying sense of vindication, washed over him. It was the triad, the spear, the circle, the triangle, the ancient symbol of the Sentinels, pulsing across 100 million light-years, a gravitational heartbeat in the loneliest part of the sky. He knew he couldn't keep it a secret. Rostova needed to be told, but her reaction was as predictable as orbital mechanics. She stood in his cluttered archive, a stark figure in her gray uniform, her face a mask of weary authority. Gravitational pulses, a symbol from a children's story. Eris, she said, her voice flat. We have a fuel shortage. The hydroponics bay is running at 60% efficiency. You're chasing ghosts with our power reserves. This isn't a ghost. Eva, Eris insisted, his voice trembling with the magnitude of his discovery. This is a signal. It's proof. The legends are real. The legends are a coping mechanism, she countered, her gaze sweeping over his chaotic workspace. Our ancestors invented them to make an indifferent universe feel less terrifying. That's all. But someone else was listening. Kalen Rourke, a freelance cargo pilot who was equal parts prodigy and reckless degenerate, leaned against the doorway, a smirk playing on his lips. Kyle was a child of the silence, born on a cramped transport vessel after his parents' colony had gone dark. He'd grown up on scavenged tech and synthetic rations, his only inheritance a visceral hatred of the quiet. He flew the dangerous supply routes to stations like Minimazini, chasing the thrill of the void because it was the only thing that made him feel alive. Don't be so quick to dismiss the old man's fairy tales, Commander, Kyle said, his voice a low drawl. Some of the best stories have teeth. What if he's right? What if there's someone out there to talk to besides ourselves? Rostova's eyes narrowed. This is a restricted area. Rourke, and you would do well to remember that idle speculation doesn't patch a hull breach. She turned back to Eris, her tone final. I want the deep space array powered down by 1800 hours. The Central Command has ordered a full resource audit. We are going into conservation mode. That's an order, Doctor. She strode out, leaving Eris in the suffocating silence of his archive, his life's work. The only glimmer of hope he had found in a lifetime of endings was about to be extinguished. Desperation was a powerful catalyst. As the station's lights dimmed for the designated conservation cycle, Eris stared at the dying signal on his monitor. He couldn't let it end like this. He had to know. He had to try to make them answer. It was Kyle who appeared in the shadows of the archive, a data slate in his hand. She's a fool, Kyle whispered, nodding in the direction Rostova had gone. The entire command structure is. They're so afraid of dying that they've forgotten how to live. He looked at Eris, his eyes gleaming in the low light. You want to send them a message, don't you, a real one? Eris looked up, his heart pounding. She'd have me spaced. She'll have to catch us first, Kale grinned. I can bypass her lockdown protocols. I can slice into the main power conduit and give you a direct, unfiltered channel to the communications array for exactly 90 seconds. After that, the whole system will crash for a system-wide reboot. She'll think it's a power surge. It was madness. It was career suicide. But the alternative was the crushing silence, the slow, inevitable fade into oblivion. Eris nodded slowly. What do I send? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Kyle gestured to the screen. You don't send words. You send that. The plan was simple, reckless, and beautiful in its audacity. Kale worked his magic on the station's network, his fingers a blur across the data slate, creating a ghost program that would divert a massive surge of power. Eris, meanwhile, worked feverishly, converting the gravitational symbol into a multi-layered transmission burst radio, microwave, neutrino, every frequency he could command. He wouldn't just send the symbol, he would shout it into the void, a beacon of defiant energy aimed directly at the heart of the Boat's void. Ready, Kale murmured, his face illuminated by the glow of his slate. Ares took a deep breath, his hand hovering over the activation key. Ready. He pressed it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the lights in the archive flickered violently. A deep, groaning hum resonated through the station's deck plates as power was siphoned from every system. On his main screen, a confirmation spike showed the message was sent, a needle of pure energy lancing across the cosmos. Then, just as Kyle had predicted, the system crashed. The screens went black. The emergency lights flickered on, casting the archive in a blood-red glow. An automated voice began to drone about a catastrophic power failure. But Ares wasn't looking at his console. He was looking at the resonance sensor, which was running on an independent battery-powered backup. The gravitational signal from the void hadn't just acknowledged his message, it had responded. The rhythmic pulse was gone, replaced by a single, sustained, deafening wave of gravitational force. Alarms began to shriek throughout Minamazani Station, not the gentle chime of a system malfunction, but the frantic, panicked scream of an imminent structural collapse. Ares, what did you do? Rostova's voice, laced with fury and a new, unfamiliar thread of fear, crackled over the emergency comms. Before he could answer, a jolt threw them all against the walls. Outside the main viewport, the blackness of space began to warp. The distant, dead star bent and twisted as if seen through flawed glass. A point of darkness, absolute and perfect, appeared in the void not far from the station. It wasn't a hole, it was an intrusion. It expanded, tearing at the edges of reality. The fabric of space-time groaning under a strain it was never meant to bear. From the rift, it emerged, a ship. But that word was inadequate. It was a monument of silent rage, a behemoth of geometry that defied reason. Its hull was a tapestry of shifting, fractal patterns that seemed to drink the light, a material that was the color of a dead god's dream. It bore the scars of forgotten wars, of impacts that could have shattered moons. No lights, no engine flare, no communication. It simply hung there, a predator of impossible scale, its presence buckling the very laws of physics around it. On the bridge, Rostova stared, her face pale, all her certainty shattered. In the archive, Kyle stood frozen, his usual smirk gone, replaced by a look of profound awe and terror. And Ares Thorn, the historian who had chased a myth, could only watch as his fairy tale came to life, a silent, terrifying answer to a question he now feared he should never have asked. The first sentinel had returned. The silence aboard Namazani Station was replaced by a cacophony of panicked noise. Alarms blared in a dozen different tones, each signifying a unique and catastrophic failure. The station's artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, sending unsecured equipment and crew members tumbling through the corridors. On the bridge, Commander Eva Rostova gripped a command console to keep from floating away, her knuckles white. Every screen was a field of screaming red alerts. Structural integrity compromised. Gravitational shear exceeding tolerance. Life support unstable. Her training, her entire career, had been about managing predictable crises, reactor failures, pirate attacks, resource shortages. There was no protocol for a mythical warship the size of a small moon appearing out of a tear in reality and passively threatening to shake her station apart. "Damage control, report," she barked, her voice tight with controlled fury. "Engineering, stabilize the gyros. I want that gravity field locked down now." But her orders were swallowed by the sheer impossibility of the situation. Her crew, seasoned professionals all, were staring out the main viewport, their faces a mixture of terror and awe. The Sentinel ship was so close that it filled their entire field of view. Its surface was not solid, but a slowly churning vortex of geometric impossibilities. Shadows folding into light in ways that made the eyes ache. It was not reflecting the light of the distant star. It was consuming it, creating a pocket of absolute blackness that felt like a wound in the universe. Down in the archive, the emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows across the data stacks. Eris Thorne was on his feet, his face pressed against the reinforced plasteel of a small viewport. He was not afraid. The panic that gripped the rest of the station felt distant, irrelevant. He was a historian witnessing the return of history itself. The raw, terrifying power radiating from the vessel was not malice. It was presence. It was the sheer weight of a thing that should not exist, pressing down on the fragile reality of his world. K.L. Rourke had picked himself up from the floor, a low whistle escaping his lips. The pilot's usual bravado was gone, replaced by the wide-eyed reverence of a child seeing the ocean for the first time. "Well, you did it, old man," he breathed, his voice barely audible over the station's groans. "You knocked on the door, and something answered." As he spoke, a new phenomenon began. The station's internal systems, which had been crashing under the strain, flickered back to life, not with their usual steady hum, but with an eerie synchronicity. Every monitor, every data slate, every holographic projector in the archive and, as they would soon learn, across the entire station simultaneously went black. Then, in perfect unison, they lit up again, displaying a single stark image: the Sentinel Triad, the spear, the circle, the triangle glowing in a soft, ethereal white light. It was on the medical readouts in the infirmary, on the nutrient paste dispensers in the mess hall, on the main tactical display on the bridge. The station's entire network had been hijacked, not with a brute force attack, but with an effortless, almost gentle assertion of dominance. Rostova watched the symbol burn itself onto her command screen. It was an act of communication so advanced it felt like a violation. It hadn't hacked their firewalls. It had simply told their systems to obey. And they had. "Communications," she snapped, tearing her eyes away from the hypnotic image. "Is it a broadcast? Are they trying to talk to us?" Her comms officer shook his head, his fingers trembling as he worked his console. "No, Commander. It's inside. It's not a signal we're receiving. It's data that is simply there. It's rewriting our core programming in real time." Before the implications of that could fully sink in, the symbol on the main screen dissolved and was replaced by a single line of text, written in the crisp, universal font of the old concordance. It was a language no one had used for over 70 years, but one every officer on the bridge could read. The Archivist. Eris felt a jolt, a sense of being seen, not by eyes, but by an intelligence that was peering directly into the station's personnel files, into his very identity. On his main console, the text changed, becoming a more personal, more direct command. "Bring the key. Come forward." Kael leaned over his shoulder, reading the words. "The key. What key?" he whispered. Eris knew instantly. His hand went to the worn leather satchel he always carried, closing around a small, heavy object within. It was a relic he had recovered years ago from the dead world of Cygnus X1, a shard of crystalline material etched with the Sentinel Triad. He had thought it a mere artifact, a piece of a forgotten puzzle. He had never imagined it was the key to it. The doors to the archive hissed open and 2 security officers entered, weapons raised, followed closely by Commander Rostova, her face a storm of fury and fear. "Thorn, what have you done?" she demanded, her voice echoing in the suddenly silent room. "It wants me," Eris said simply, his voice calm, filled with a strange new certainty. "It wants the archivist. I have to go." Rostova stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. "You are not leaving this station. That thing is tearing us apart without even trying. You will stay here and you will tell me how to undo this. You can't undo this." "Eva," Eris replied, his gaze unwavering. "You can't put history back in the box. It didn't come here to destroy us. It came because I called. It's answering a question." Kael stepped between them, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. "Look, Commander, the walking encyclopedia might be our only shot at not getting turned into a gravitational pretzel. If that ship wanted us dead, we'd be a cloud of expanding vapor already. It's asking for him. Let me take him." Rostova's gaze flickered between the reckless pilot and the obsessed historian. Her tactical mind screamed at the absurdity of the situation. Round the symbol still burning on every screen in sight was an undeniable argument. They were out of options. She was a commander with nothing to command. "One shuttle," she said, her voice clipped. "Rourke, you fly, and then you keep an open comms channel at all times, and the moment it turns hostile, you get out of there. Is that understood?" Kael gave a mock salute. "Loud and clear, Commander. Let's go see what the ghosts want." The flight from Namazani Station to the Sentinel vessel was a journey of a few short kilometers that felt like crossing an ocean. Kael's ship, a battered but heavily modified freighter he called the Stray Dog, bucked and groaned as it fought through the gravitational distortions emanating from the larger vessel. Up close, the Sentinel was even more incomprehensible. Its fractal hull seemed to shift and writhe, never settling on a single shape, like a living equation working itself out. As they approached, a section of the hull dissolved, not opening like a door, but simply peeling away into nothingness, revealing a portal of calm, black space. "No turning back now," Kael muttered, guiding the Stray Dog through the opening. The moment they crossed the threshold, the turbulence vanished. The ship settled into a perfect stillness. The portal sealed behind them, and they were suspended in a cavernous interior so vast it defied perspective. There were no walls, no ceiling, no floor, only an endless, starless void. In the center of this void floated a single, luminous platform. "Well," Eris breathed, "it certainly has a flair for the dramatic." They landed the Stray Dog on the platform and stepped out into the silent, sterile air. As Eris's feet touched the glowing surface, the object in his satchel began to vibrate, emitting a low, resonant hum. He pulled out the crystalline shard. It was glowing brightly, the etched triad pulsing in time with some unseen rhythm. A figure began to coalesce before them, woven from threads of faint light and motes of shadow. It was humanoid in shape, tall and slender, clad in armor that seemed more conceptual than physical. Its face was a smooth, featureless mask. Yet Eris felt an ancient, weary intelligence focused entirely on him. "You are the one who remembers," a voice said, not through the air, but directly inside their minds. It was a voice of immense age, layered with the echoes of 1,000 forgotten languages. "You are the archivist." "I am," Eris said, his own voice sounding small and fragile in the immense space. "Who? What are you?" "I am the anchor of this vessel, the last remnant of the fleet that stood against the unraveling." We are the Sentinels. The anchor's form shifted, and the void around them filled with images. A torrent of information poured directly into their minds. They saw a galaxy teeming with trillions of souls, a civilization of light and energy. Then they saw the Unravelers. They were not ships or armies, but a creeping, insidious nothingness, a conceptual virus that attacked reality itself. It didn't destroy, it erased. It consumed information, history, memory, turning vibrant worlds into blank slates. Their civilizations not just dead, but having never existed at all. The silence wasn't an event. It was a symptom of a cosmic disease. We fought them. The anchor's thoughts continued, filled with a sorrow that transcended time. But you cannot fight an enemy that devours the very concept of fighting. Our weapons were forgotten as we fired them. Our star charts became blank maps. To preserve a memory of what was, we retreated from space-time, folding ourselves into a stasis crease, waiting for a sign that the galaxy had developed a memory strong enough to resist, a culture that valued its past enough to fight for a future. The key, Eris whispered, holding up the glowing shard. An echo, a sliver of our existence left behind. Your signal, resonating with its frequency, was the proof we waited for. You have remembered us into being. Kyle, who had been standing in stunned silence, finally found his voice. So, you're here to save us, to fight these Unravelers. The anchor's featureless mask seemed to turn toward him. The feeling that flooded their minds was not one of hope, but of grim necessity. We are here because you have called us, but in doing so, you have lit a fire in the dark. Your civilization was too small, too quiet to be noticed. A forgotten footnote. By reaching into the past, you have made yourselves visible in the present. The silence is over because the Unravelers now have something new to erase. The images in the void shifted again, showing a star chart centered on their own solar system. A wave of shimmering distortion, a tide of pure absence, was flowing toward it from the direction of the galactic core. It was moving faster than light, faster than thought. They are coming. The anchor's voice echoed in their minds, a death knell for the quiet years. This vessel is but a scout, a single memory. The rest of our fleet, the ghost Armada, remains dormant, scattered in the great voids between the stars, hidden in the deepest folds of reality. They must be awakened. A new map blazed into existence before them, a map of impossible places, the hearts of black holes, the event horizons of dying stars, the silent core of the Boöta's void. It was a map of tombs. You are the archivist, the anchor repeated, its focus returning to Eris. You remembered us. Now, you must help us remember ourselves. You must wake the dead. The map pulsed with the ghosts of a forgotten war, and Eris Thorn knew that the silence he had spent his life studying was about to be replaced by the sound of breaking worlds. The revelation hung in the silent, cavernous interior of the Sentinel ship, a weight heavier than any star. Humanity had not been spared. It had been ignored. Their 73 years of quiet dread were not the aftermath of a war, but the calm before a storm they had just summoned. Kyle Rourke was the first to break the mental silence, his thoughts a chaotic mix of disbelief and a nascent, reckless excitement that even the end of the world couldn't entirely extinguish. Wake the dead. You want us to fly into the heart of a black hole because a ghost in a tin can drew us a treasure map, he projected, his skepticism a sharp counterpoint to the anchor's solemnity. The anchor's featureless face turned towards him, and the mental voice that filled their minds was laced with an ancient, chilling patience. You pilot the vessel Stray Dog. Its reactor core is a modified singularity drive, scavenged from a Class 7 Concordance hauler. You are familiar with navigating gravitational extremes. Your psychological profile indicates a proclivity for high-risk endeavors, bordering on a self-destructive obsession with the unknown. You are, despite your abrasive persona, the ideal candidate for this task. Kyle was stunned into silence. The anchor hadn't just scanned his ship, it had scanned him, peeling back the layers of his personality with the detached precision of a biologist dissecting an insect. He felt naked, exposed, and for the first time in his life, utterly out of his depth. Eris, however, felt a strange sense of purpose solidifying within him. His entire life had been spent among the dead, sifting through the echoes of what was. Now, he was being asked to give them a voice. How, he asked, his mind focused, ignoring Kyle's internal crisis. These locations, they aren't just remote, they're physically inaccessible. How do we reach them, and what do we do when we get there? The void around them shimmered, and the star chart of tombs was replaced by a single, breathtakingly complex image, a schematic of the Stray Dog. Lines of light overlaid the vessel's structure, highlighting its singularity drive, its navigation computer, and its long-range comms array. This vessel will be our vessel, the anchor explained. We will augment it. Its systems will be expanded. We will provide you with the means to fold space-time, to navigate the currents that flow beneath reality. Your ship will not travel through space, but between its layers. As the anchor spoke, tendrils of incandescent light snaked out from the platform, enveloping the Stray Dog. The ship shuddered, its hull groaning not from stress, but from transformation. Kyle watched, horrified and fascinated, as the familiar lines of his ship began to blur and reform. Panels of the Sentinel's own light-devouring material flowed like liquid metal, grafting themselves onto the Fravreter's frame. The engine's low thrum deepened, its pitch shifting into a key that vibrated in their very bones. The process was terrifyingly organic, like a chrysalis being forcibly evolved. Inside the minds of Eris and Kale, a torrent of new information bloomed stellar navigation charts for dimensions they never knew existed, engineering principles that treated gravity as a malleable fabric, communication protocols for broadcasting a signal into the heart of a sleeping god. It was like having an entire library poured directly into their brains. The overload was immense, staggering, but it was also coherent. The knowledge settled not as raw data, but as instinct. Kyle found he understood, on a fundamental level, how to plot a course whose destination was not a place, but a specific desired outcome in the quantum foam. Eris, in turn, could now read the resonance of a sleeping sentinel to understand the precise frequency needed to awaken it. The transformation of the Stray Dog was complete in a matter of moments. From the outside, it looked almost the same, but now it was scarred with the impossible fractal patterns of the Sentinel hull, and a faint, internal light pulsed from within its frame. It was a mongrel ship, a hybrid of junkyard grit and cosmic divinity. The first tomb is the easiest and the closest. The anchor's voice echoed as the star chart reappeared, highlighting a point in a neighboring nebula known as the Ashen Veil. It is the resting place of the Vanguard, the fleet's protector. Awaken it, and it will shield this system from the Unraveler's initial approach, buying us the time we need to awaken the others. You have the knowledge. You have the vessel. Now you must have the will. The luminous platform beneath them began to dissolve, and the portal they had entered through reappeared. The message was clear, they were being sent out. Wait, Eris projected. a sudden, cold thought piercing his newfound purpose. What about Menamazini Station Commander Rostova? The Unravelers are coming for us. We need to warn them, to evacuate them. Commander Eva Rostova has already been informed, the anchor replied. The void around them shifted one last time, showing them a live image of the Menamazini's bridge. Rostova was standing ramrod straight, her face pale but resolute, staring at a tactical display that now showed the same terrifying star chart of the approaching Unravelers. She does not believe. She sees the data as a fabrication, a hostile attack from our vessel. She is preparing to defend her station. Defend it from what? Kale scoffed. She's going to shoot at nothing, at an idea, to a mind that only comprehends matter. A conceptual threat is indistinguishable from a lie. The anchor stated, its voice devoid of judgment. She will fight the only enemy she can see, you. Her fear will make her an obstacle. We have contained her. The image zoomed out, revealing that Menamazini Station was now encased in a shimmering, translucent sphere of energy. It was cut off, isolated, a ship in a bottle. You can't just leave them there, Eris protested, horrified. Their fate is now tied to yours. If you succeed, the shield will hold and they will be protected. If you fail, it will be the first thing the Unravelers erase. Their survival is your incentive. Now go. The imperative was absolute. There was no room for argument. Eris and Kale scrambled back aboard the newly christened vessel, which felt both alien and intimately familiar beneath their feet. As Kale strapped himself into the pilot seat, the controls lit up in response to his touch. The new Sentinel systems integrating seamlessly with the old. He looked at the navigation screen, which now displayed not just 3 dimensions, but a swirling, multi-layered cartography of space-time itself. All right, Eris, he said, his voice a strange mix of grim determination and manic glee. Hold on to your library cards. Things are about to get weird. He engaged the drive. There was no roar of engines, no lurch of acceleration. Instead, the universe outside the viewport folded. The stars did not streak past. They dissolved into threads of color, weaving themselves into a tapestry of impossible geometry. The stray dog was no longer moving through space. It was pulling its destination toward itself through the layers beneath. They were a needle stitching the fabric of reality. Their destination, the Ashen Veil, was a graveyard of stars, a nebula choked with the dust and gas of dead suns. Conventional ships avoided it due to the treacherous gravitational tides and sensor-blinding dust clouds. For the new stray dog, it was an open road. Kyle, guided by his new instincts, navigated the swirling chaos not by sight, but by feeling the gravitational currents, dipping and weaving the ship through the folds of space-time like a surfer riding a wave. I'm detecting it, Eris said from the co-pilot station. His eyes closed in concentration. He wasn't looking at a screen. He was listening, with a part of his mind he never knew he had, to the deep, silent hum of the dormant sentinel. It's asleep. But it's dreaming of a battle. I can feel its anger. The dream was a psychic residue, a powerful echo of the Vanguard's last stand against the Unravelers, looping for millennia in the heart of a collapsed star. It was this emotional resonance that was causing the nebula's violent turbulence. They emerged into a pocket of calm space at the heart of the veil. Before them floated the source of the disturbance, a perfect sphere of obsidian, no larger than a fighter craft, that radiated a cold that seemed to leach the very energy from their ship. It was a singularity, a collapsed star, but it was unnaturally stable. It is not a star, the anchor's voice whispered in their minds, a faint echo now across the void. It is a cocoon. The Vanguard wrapped itself in a shroud of pure gravity to hide from the Unravelers. So, how do we knock? Kyle asked, eyeing the sphere of absolute blackness warily. We don't knock, Eris said, his hands flying across a newly formed console of glowing glyphs. We sing the song It's Forgotten. Following the instincts implanted by the anchor, Eris began to broadcast a complex sequence of resonant frequencies, not of sound, but of modulated gravity waves. He wasn't just sending a signal, he was sending a memory, a story. He broadcast the memory of the Sentinel symbol, of their long wait in the void, of the archivist who had remembered them. He was reminding the sleeping giant of its own name. For a long moment, nothing happened. The sphere of gravity remained inert, silent. Kyle began to fidget. Is it working, or did you just tell it a boring bedtime story? And then, the cocoon cracked. A hairline fracture of pure light appeared on the surface of the singularity. Then another, and another, spreading like ice breaking on a frozen lake. A low, resonant hum filled the void, a note of such profound bass that it shook the stray dog to its core. The sphere of gravity shattered, not exploding, but unfolding, its shell of crushed space-time blossoming outward like the petals of a monstrous flower. From its heart, the Vanguard emerged. It was a warship built on a scale that dwarfed even the anchor's vessel. It was not a ship of stealth or grace, but a fortress of pure, brutalist design, a wall of the same light-devouring armor, bristling with weapon emplacements that looked capable of cracking a planet's crust. As its systems came online, colossal engines glowing with the light of captive nebulae, a new voice joined the anchors in their minds. It was not calm or weary, but a booming, bellicose chorus of 1,000 warrior minds speaking as one. Who dares disturb our vigil? Before Eris or Kyle could answer, a new alert flashed on their console. It was a proximity warning, but it wasn't from local space. It was from the edge of the solar system they had just left. A single, chilling message, translated from the Unraveler's encroaching wave of conceptual absence. Memory detected. Preparing erasure. The Vanguard's awakening had been the equivalent of a psychic flare, and it had just put a giant cosmic target on their home. The voice of the Vanguard resonated through the minds of Eris and Kyle, not as a query, but as an accusation forged from millennia of silent fury. It was the collective consciousness of a warrior caste, roused from a dream of battle into a reality it did not yet comprehend. Before them, the warship was a city of geometric blades and impenetrable shadows, its engines burning with a contained, righteous anger. The raw power it emanated was so immense it made the anchor's vessel feel like a distant echo. Kale swallowed hard, his hands tightening on the controls of the stray dog. For the first time, he felt small, not just in the face of the cosmos, but in the presence of its rightful guardians. I am Eris Thorn, the archivist of Mnemosyne. Eris projected, his thoughts carefully shaped, respectful but firm. He pushed forward the memories the anchor had given him, the silence, his discovery of the gravitational pulse, the encroaching wave of the Unravelers. He showed them the image of their home system, now targeted for erasure. We came to awaken you. The unraveling has begun again. The Vanguard's 1,000-fold mind fell silent as it absorbed the influx of information. The immense warship hung motionless, its engines pulsing slowly, like the heartbeat of a leviathan. The silence stretched, thick with judgment. Then, the collective voice returned, its fury tempered by a cold, grim understanding. The memory is fragmented. The anchor, it is a scout, a librarian. Its knowledge is of what was. We are what is. We see the approaching wave. It is not an echo of the old war. It is larger, more complete, a tactical display, far more advanced than the one the anchor had shown them, blazed into existence in their minds. It depicted their solar system not as a simple map, but as a complex, multi-layered construct of space-time, causality, and information. The Unraveler wave was a shimmering, cancerous blight, and where it passed, the very fabric of the display, the data itself, ceased to be. More terrifyingly, the vanguard showed them what was behind the wave, a focal point, a singularity of non-existence that was the source of the erasure. They are not just erasing, they are consuming. The vanguard's thoughts boomed. They feed on information, on history, on reality itself. They have grown stronger in the silence. "Can you stop them?" Kyle asked, his voice a whisper in the mental amphitheater. "This vessel is the shield of the fleet. Our purpose is to endure, to protect. We can intercept the wave. We can blunt its initial impact, but we cannot destroy its source. To do that, the full might of the fleet must be brought to bear." The display shifted, once again showing the map of the other dormant sentinels. The anchor's path was one of necessity, a librarian's hope. The path to victory is more direct. There is a nexus point, a place where the folds of reality are thin. From there, the chorus, the fleet's central command and psionic amplifier, can be awakened. Once the chorus is active, it can broadcast the awakening code to the rest of the fleet simultaneously. The map highlighted a new destination, one the anchor had not shown them. It was a binary star system where a pulsar and a black hole were locked in a gravitational death spiral. It was a place of extreme violence and temporal distortion. "The Maelstrom," Eris breathed, recognizing the system from ancient, cautionary star charts. No ship has ever entered it and returned. The tidal forces to the radiation. A conventional ship would be atomized. The Vanguard confirmed. Your vessel is no longer conventional. The path through the Maelstrom leads to the chorus's tomb. It is a path we cannot take. Our vessel is a fortress, not a key. It is too large, too anchored in this reality. You must go. We will proceed to your system and establish a bulwark. We will buy you time." The Vanguard's engines flared, burning with the intensity of a newborn sun, with a grace that defied its impossible mass. The colossal warship turned and, without any visible means of propulsion, simply vanished, leaving a lingering distortion in space-time that quickly healed itself. Eris and Kyle were alone again, floating in the ashen veil, the silence now filled with an almost unbearable sense of urgency. "No pressure, right?" Kyle said, his knuckles cracking as he gripped the controls. "Just a quick jaunt into a cosmic blender to wake up the choir so they can stop the universe from being eaten by sentient static." Despite his words, his eyes were bright, his fear burned away by the sheer, unadulterated thrill of the impossible. He plotted the course for the Maelstrom, the ship's hybrid navigation system tracing a delicate, terrifying path through the swirling vortex of the binary star's gravitational fields. "Engaging drive," he announced. The world outside the viewport once again dissolved, but this journey was different. It was not a smooth stitching of reality, but a violent, chaotic tumble through its raw, untamed underbelly. They were surfing on a tidal wave of pure physics. The stray dog groaning and shuddering as Kyle wrestled with forces that should have torn it to shreds. Eris focused. using the new senses the anchor had granted him to navigate not by sight, but by the psychic resonance of their destination. He was a living compass, pointing the way through the storm. They emerged into the eye of the maelstrom. Here, space was unnaturally calm. The light from the pulsar was bent into a perfect, shimmering ring around the velvet darkness of the black hole, creating the illusion of a colossal, unblinking eye. And in the center, at the gravitational balance point between the two celestial titans, floated a structure that was breathtaking in its beauty. It was not a ship. It was a cathedral of crystal and light, a vast, intricate lattice of what looked like frozen music. It pulsed with a soft, internal luminescence, utterly unharmed by the cosmic violence raging around it. This was the tomb of the chorus. As they approached, the cathedral's song grew louder in their minds. It was a symphony of a million voices, all humming a single, resonant note that vibrated with pure potential. It's so peaceful, Eris thought. The beauty of it a stark contrast to the brutalism of the vanguard. Don't get too comfortable, Kale warned, his eyes darting across the sensor displays. Something's not right. The maelstrom. It's not natural. The gravitational patterns are too stable, too perfect. It's a cage. He was right. As they drew closer to the crystalline structure, Arius felt it too, a dissonance beneath the harmonious song, a faint, discordant hum, a wrong note in the perfect symphony. A section of the cathedral's surface rippled, and a new voice, singular and sharp, cut through the chorus's gentle hum. It was a voice of cold logic and immense, ancient power. You are unexpected. Your memory signature is hybrid. Interesting. Unlike the Sentinels, this voice was not in their minds. It was broadcast over a secure channel, a voice of pure, synthesized sound. A figure emerged from the crystal wall, not made of light like the anchor, but of solid, gleaming chrome that reflected the swirling light of the maelstrom. It was elegant, humanoid, and carried a staff that hummed with contained energy. I am the warden, it announced. I am the guardian of this prison, and you are not permitted to speak with the inmates. Prison, Eris projected, confused. This is a tomb, the resting place of the chorus. The warden tilted its head via a gesture of almost human curiosity, a distinction without a difference. The Unravelers were not our first existential threat. The chorus, their solution to a long-forgotten war, was to impose a harmony of perfect order. They sought to silence all dissonance, all chaos, all free will, believing it to be the only path to lasting peace. They would have turned the galaxy into a single, placid, unchanging thought. The story flooded Eris's mind, a piece of history so old that even the Sentinels had perhaps chosen to forget it, and the fleet had fractured in a civil war. The vanguard and its ilk, the warriors, believed in fighting to preserve existence as it was. The chorus and its followers, and the mystics and scions, believed existence itself was flawed. The vanguard had won, and their punishment for the chorus was not death, but isolation. They had been sealed away in this beautiful prison, their galaxy-unifying song dampened by the maelstrom, a cage built of physics and time. So you're their jailer, Kyle said, his hand moving subtly towards the ship's newly augmented weapons controls. I am their consequence, the warden corrected. I was created by the Vanguard to ensure the chorus never again threatened the sanctity of choice, and I will not allow you to undo their judgment. We don't have a choice, Eris pleaded. The Unravelers are here. We need the chorus to awaken the fleet. The Unravelers are a problem of chaos. The chorus is a problem of order, the warden replied, its voice implacable. One threatens existence, the other threatens meaning. I am programmed to consider the latter the greater threat. The warden raised its staff, and the maelstrom responded. The delicate balance of the binary stars shifted. The eye of the storm began to shrink, the gravitational forces intensifying, threatening to crush the stray dog and the crystal prison alike. "It's going to kill us all just to keep them quiet," Kale yelled, wrestling with the controls as the ship screamed under the strain. Oris closed his eyes, ignoring the alarms, the groaning hull, the imminent threat of death. He focused on the song of the chorus, pushing past the warden's dampening field. He couldn't awaken them with the memory of the sentinels. Their jailer was a sentinel itself. He had to give them a new reason to wake up. He broadcast a different memory. He sent them the memory of humanity. He sent them the chaos of love and hate, of art and war, of discovery and despair. He sent them the beautiful, terrible, dissonant symphony of free will. He showed them a species that had clawed its way out of the mud of its planet, reached for the stars, and now faced utter annihilation, not because it was flawed, but simply because it was. He wasn't asking them to save the galaxy. He was asking them to save the song. The crystal cathedral flared with an impossibly bright light. The million-voice hum became a roar, a tidal wave of psionic power that slammed into the warden and the maelstrom itself. The warden staggered, its chrome form flickering as the chorus's awakened power overwhelmed its ancient programming. The death spiral of the two stars stabilized, the cage breaking under the sheer force of the prisoner's awakened will. A new, unified voice, the voice of the awakened chorus, washed over them. It was a voice of a million minds, now united in a new, more complex harmony. "We have heard your song. It is chaotic, beautiful. It is worthy of preservation." The warden fell to one knee, its staff clattering to the ground. "My purpose," it stammered, its synthesized voice filled with static. "My programming. Your purpose is fulfilled." "Warden," the chorus's voice soothed, "there is a new dissonance to silence. A silence of nothingness." The crystalline prison dissolved, its fragments reforming into a fleet of ships that were more like living sculptures of light than vessels of war. They swarmed around the stray dog, their collective song a promise of aid. Then, the chorus turned its full power outward. It did not need a map. It reached out with its mind across the folds of reality and began to sing the awakening song to its brethren, scattered in their lonely tombs across the void, from the heart of black holes and the event horizons of dying stars. The ghost armada of the sentinels began to stir, roused by a hymn to a flawed and beautiful chaos they had once sought to destroy. The war for reality had begun. The awakening of the chorus was not a whisper, but a psychic thunderclap that rolled across the galaxy. From the bridge of the stray dog, now hovering at the heart of a blossoming fleet of crystalline ships, Eris and Kale felt the response. It was a wave of pure affirmation, a chorus of titanic minds shaking off the dust of ages. Across the star charts in their minds, the locations of the dormant sentinels flared like newborn suns. The ghost armada was waking, and with its awakening, the very texture of the cosmos began to change. The oppressive, encroaching silence of the unravelers was met with a rising tide of defiant sound, a symphony of purpose that pushed back against the encroaching void. The voice of the chorus, now clear and resonant in their minds, addressed them directly. "Your part is not yet over. Archivist, pilot. The fleet awakens, but it requires a fulcrum, a point of focus in your reality. The vanguard moves to shield your world, but it cannot be everywhere at once. The unravelers do not attack on a single front. They attack the concept of a front. They erase the lines of battle as they are drawn. An image formed in their minds, Earth, not as a strategic target, but as a story. The Unravelers were being drawn to it because, thanks to Eris, it was now the focal point of the galaxy's memory. It was the place where the Sentinels had been remembered into existence. To erase humanity now was to erase the catalyst, to retroactively abort the Sentinels' return. It was the most important story in the universe, and the Unravelers were coming to delete it. "You must return," the chorus commanded. "Your hybrid vessel, the stray dog, is now more than a key. It is a conduit, carries the echo of our awakening, must be the anchor that links our fleet to your reality. Go, we will follow." Before they could respond, the crystalline fleet shimmered and vanished, folding into the space between spaces, moving to intercept the Unraveler wave at 1,000 different points across the galaxy. Once again, Eris and Kale were alone, but the emptiness around them was no longer lonely. It was filled with the promise of imminent, glorious, terrible war. "Home it is," Kyle said, his voice quiet, stripped of its usual bravado. The thrill was gone, replaced by the crushing weight of their new role. He wasn't just a pilot anymore. He was carrying the hopes of two civilizations, a bridge of flesh and steel between the forgotten and the about to be erased. The journey back was instantaneous. Kael didn't plot a course. He simply focused on the psychic beacon of Earth, and the universe rearranged itself around them. They dropped out of the fold into high orbit, and the sight that greeted them was a scene of sublime, terrifying beauty. The Vanguard was there, the colossal warship. A mountain of shadow and fury was positioned between Earth and the sun as it is, its hull absorbing the star's light, creating a partial eclipse over the planet. It was not idle. From weapon emplacements the size of cities, it was firing beams of coherent gravity, not at an enemy, but at space-time itself. It was weaving a defensive tapestry, reinforcing the fabric of reality around the solar system, preparing for the Unravelers' assault. But the Unravelers were already there, not as ships, but as flickers of wrongness in the void. A sensor buoy would simply cease to be. A patch of stars would blink out of existence. A communication satellite would report its own non-existence seconds before it vanished. It was a battle of concepts, and the Vanguard was weathering a storm of targeted oblivion. Below, Namazani Station was still encased in the anchor's protective shield, a lone observer to the cosmic battle. As the stray dog appeared, a frantic, desperate signal reached them. It was Commander Rostova. "Rourke, Thorn, what in God's name is going on? Our sensors. They're reporting paradoxes. Physics is breaking down out here." Her voice was frayed, the voice of a commander whose rulebook had been set on fire. "The legends are real, Commander," Eris broadcast back, his own voice now imbued with a calm authority he had never possessed. "And they're here to save us. Just hold on." As he spoke, the main Unraveler wave arrived. It was not a fleet, but a visible tear in reality, a shimmering curtain of iridescent static that ate the light. Where it passed, the universe was not just empty, it was null. The background radiation of the cosmos, the very echo of creation, went silent. The Vanguard met the wave head-on. The beams of reinforced reality it had woven held firm. The Unraveler's erasure effect sputtering and sparking against the shield like water on hot iron. But the strain was immense. The Vanguard's colossal form flickered, parts of its hull momentarily winking out of existence before its powerful systems reasserted their reality. It was a battle of belief, of a thing that insisted I am against a thing that insisted you are not. The Vanguard's voice boomed in their minds. strained but unbroken. The anchor is required, the fulcrum must be set. Eris and Kyle knew what they had to do. Kyle sent the stray dog into a steep dive, not toward the planet, but toward the Vanguard itself. "This might feel a little strange," he muttered, as he flew them directly at the warship's solid hull. But instead of impacting, they passed through it, the ship's hybrid nature allowing it to phase through the Sentinel's armor. They emerged into the vessel's heart, a Dyson sphere built around a captive singularity. And there, floating in the center, was the anchor, its form of light now acting as the ship's central control, its mind focused entirely on the battle raging outside. The anchor turned its featureless face toward them as they approached. The archivist, "You have succeeded." The chorus sings again. "The Vanguard said you needed us," Eris said. "We're the conduit." Yes. The chorus has roused the fleet, but they are spread across the galaxy, fighting in 1,000 different realities. They must be drawn here, to this moment. Your vessel, infused with the chorus's awakening song, is the lure. The anchor extended a tendril of light that touched the hull of the stray dog. The ship's systems screamed in protest as a wave of unimaginable energy flowed into its reactor. The entire ship became a beacon, a lighthouse broadcasting a single, clear message across all dimensions. Here. The story ends here. And the fleet answered. All at once, they began to arrive. They didn't appear in flashes of light. They simply unfolded into being, emerging from the layers of reality. Ships of crystal and song from the chorus. Brutalist fortresses of war like the Vanguard. Sleek hunters that moved like whispers. Vast, city-sized carriers that were ecosystems unto themselves. The full, terrifying, beautiful might of the Ghost Armada assembled in Earth's orbit, a fleet that had not been seen in the sky for 1,000,000 years. They didn't attack. They sang. Led by the chorus, the entire Sentinel fleet began to broadcast a single, unified frequency. It was not a song of war, but a song of creation. It was the ultimate assertion of existence, a symphony that harmonized with the fundamental vibrations of the universe. They were not fighting the Unraveler's erasure. They were overriding it, reinforcing reality on a conceptual level, making the very idea of non-existence impossible in their presence. The shimmering wave of the Unravelers faltered. The tide of nothingness began to recede, unable to gain purchase on a reality that was so loudly, so defiantly, asserting its own right to be. The source of the erasure, the singularity of non-existence at the heart of the wave, was now exposed. It was a hole in the universe, a vortex of pure absence, and it began to unravel itself. Unable to sustain its own paradox in the face of such overwhelming existence, it imploded, winking out of being with a final, silent scream that was felt rather than heard. And then there was silence. But it was not the terrifying silence of absence. It was the calm, peaceful silence of a battle won. In the aftermath, the Sentinel fleet remained in orbit, a silent, watchful ring of impossible ships around the blue marble of Earth, on the bridge of the stray dog, floating in the heart of the Vanguard. Eris and Kale looked at each other, the enormity of what they had done settling upon them. The anchor's voice filled their minds, soft and weary. The unraveling is ended. The memory is secure. We are tired. The Sentinels had won. But their war was eternal. They were a concept, an antibody to the disease of nothingness. They could not return to their dormant sleep, not now that the galaxy knew the threat was real. They would become its silent, ever-watchful guardians. The shield around Namazani Station dissolved. Commander Rostova, Her face projected on their screen was speechless, her rigid authority broken, replaced by a profound, humbling awe. She simply looked from the human faces of Eris and Kael to the impossible fleet that filled her viewport, and for the first time, she understood. Eris Thorne, the humble historian, had not just saved their station, he had saved the entire story. Kael Rourke, the reckless pilot, had not just flown a ship, he had navigated the currents of destiny itself. Their journey was over. Humanity was no longer a forgotten footnote in a silent galaxy. It was now the keeper of the most important memory of all the memory of the day the ghosts came back from the void, not to haunt the universe, but to teach it how to sing again.